Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Senate Commerce and Labor. Senator Spearman will not be available today, so we will try to have a good meeting. All right, so Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Hardy, Senator Lang,
Here.
Vice Chair Neal,
Here.
Senator Pickard,
Here.
Senator Scheibel,
Here.
Senator Settlemeyer,
Here.
and Chair Spearman is absent.
Thank you for that. All right, so we have two bills on the agenda this morning. If you are just tuning in, there are a couple of ways to participate. If you are interested in these two bills on the agenda this morning, you can go to Nellis, click participate, and then you will receive a call-in information to then allow you to come in and testify and support, opposition, or neutral. If you're not the person you want to call in and you're kind of shy, then there you can also go to the committee agenda and you can send an email stating your comments with any kind of backup information about your support, opposition, or neutral on either of these bills. So we will go ahead and get started. We have two bills, SB 276 and SB 282. We will start with SB 276. Senator Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. Hopefully, can you hear me okay?
Sir.
I was having some camera issues, so it seems like it's fixed now. I am Mo Dennis, representing Senate District 2 in Clark County. Pleased to be here today to present Senate Bill 76. I am presenting two bills today containing various provisions that are interwoven, which means you're going to see parts of this that look exactly the same between the two. While both SB 276 and SB 282 impose a $15 technology fee, SB 276 establishes the accounts within the state general fund. The fee must be deposited. And presenting with me today is Assemblywoman Heidi Kasama, also to help answer any questions. We have Sharath Chandra, Administrator of the Real Estate Division from the Department of Business and Industry, Tiffany Banks, General Counsel for the Nevada Association of Realtors, and Teresa McKee, CEO of the National Association of Realtors, and David Tina, Legislative Chair for the Nevada Association of Realtors. So let me give you some background. Every year, our state's information technology becomes outdated by the time state agencies come to the legislature to request funding for IT modernization. As you know, we get these bills all the time on technology. We run into issues of trying to find the appropriate funds. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic raised demands for government work and services in many new, unexpected, and rapidly changing ways. For example, the rapid transition to remote work required more automated business processes so agencies can operate with minimal paper and in-office staff. It is also important that these remote capabilities do not compromise IT security or data privacy. It is quickly becoming clear that older enterprise systems and processes cannot keep pace with many emerging government needs. As we look ahead to the post-pandemic future, we need to acknowledge the revenue decline, which makes it vital to identify every opportunity for cost control and operational efficiencies. In addition, we need a resilient technology platform to maintain service continuity during unforeseen conditions that stress or disrupt the business environment. The IT modernization needs vary between state agencies, but ultimately it is necessary to leverage technology to meet expanding goals and streamline services offered to our residents and consumer. And I want to add here, one of the things that drew me to this legislation was I changed careers 5 years ago from computers to real estate. And so this actually has both elements of that, in that there's a technology piece where I spent the majority of my career, and then there's a real estate piece that I've had to live these issues. And so it gives me that opportunity to come and see if we can fix an issue that really needs to be resolved. For these reasons, SB 276 imposes a fee specifically dedicated to improving the technology needs of the real estate division of the Department of Business and Industry. And I can give you one example when it comes to technology. As I've had to take continuing education as a realtor, as a real estate agent, you take classes and you have so many hours. And as you know, I brought a bill last time that actually increased the hours from 24 to 36. And so every time you take a class, they give you a certificate. You have to hold on to that certificate until it's time to register or to re-register for your license. And you have to physically have that in hand because the places that you took the classes from cannot submit them electronically to the division. And so at least now you could take a picture of it and send that in. But having the opportunity to have connection between schools and the division, between realtors, and be able to do more things on technology is one of the reasons that we need this technology. So Senate Bill 276 establishes that $15 technology fee imposed for each applicant for the issuance or renewal of certain licenses, certificates, permits, registrations issued by the real estate division. In addition, the bill creates various technology accounts for Chapter 645, real estate brokers and salespersons, 645C, appraisers of real estate and appraisal management companies, 645D, inspectors of structures and energy auditors, 645H, asset management companies and asset managers, and 119A, timeshares of the Nevada revised statutes in the state general fund administered by the division. Any interest and income earned must be credited to the accounts, and any remaining balance in the account does not revert to the state general fund. Finally, the bill requires that money collected from the technology fee be deposited in the respective account governing certain professions or occupations and be accounted for and used for acquiring or improving technology used by the division for administering the respective professions. And before I finish, I have Assemblywoman Kasama here with me to give some comments.
Thank you. This is Assemblywoman Heidi Kasama for the record. Thank you, Senator Moe, and thank you, Vice Chair and members of the committee for hearing our presentation this morning. I have to echo some of the comments that Senator Dennis made. For example, we have a training section division of our company. And to your point where you have to hang on to those paper certificates, we have people that took a class 18 months, let's say, before trying to renew, because everybody procrastinates that week with their license, and they're frantically calling our company for the paper copy that they've lost, and they need it the next day, otherwise their license expires. So it certainly is a problem. The other thing I can speak to, not only having to have that paper copy, but right now there is an option with the real estate division that you can either mail your renewal certificate and copies of all of the continuing education certificates, or there is a program where you can upload it online and do that. And I have had so many issues with my agents. I have about 230 agents in my office that manage, and so many issues with the agents when they upload their renewal and their certificates. It seems to just not work. For some agents it works, and for some it doesn't. It is not a consistent program. Then we'll get a notice from the real estate division that my agent has not renewed their license. They get a warning. If they don't see that, then their license expires. So I can actually have somebody in the middle of a transaction, which has happened to me. They're in the middle of helping a consumer buy our home. They uploaded their renewal to the platform. They find out that we get notice as the broker that their license is expired, even though they tell us they did everything the way they're supposed to renew online. So now I have a person who is no longer licensed and can't complete that transaction. So now we have to assign another person until they can get relicensed. And before, certainly we could rush down to the real estate office with all of this and get it fixed. But with COVID, we can't. So it has really magnified the issue with the technology issues that the real estate division is having. And I know that they have been trying their best, but they're hampered by lack of funds as well. And so that is a big reason why we're presenting this, is so that they have the funds to properly upgrade their system, have people trained, so we don't have these issues. Because it not only affects the license, but it affects the consumer as well in their transaction. Thank you.
So, the Senator Dennis. So, as you can tell, and we come from varying degrees of experience. Some of them, Kasama has been in the industry for many, many years, and I'm fairly new. She's successful. I'm not as I'm not, but it's been a great opportunity for me. And hopefully you understand what we're trying to do with this particular bill. And as I mentioned, we do have several of the experts here with us that could help to answer any questions that you might have. So with that, Madam Chair, I believe that we're ready for questions.
Okay, thank you for that. First up is Senator Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and thank you, Senator Dennis. I'm a broker as well, although inactive at the moment. I certainly appreciate the idea of bringing the real estate division into the 21st century. I have stood in the long lines down at the building down in Southern Nevada and waited to get to the counter so I could get stuff done. I'm not, fortunately, much of a procrastinator and have a hard time justifying putting $15 on everybody because people tend to procrastinate, but that's the reality of the situation, right? We need to be able to do things, and there's no reason to do this online. It's not like a cosmetology license where you have to show a set of manual skills. And I could opine on the education that we have to suffer through. But I'm wondering, when it comes to, and this may be a question for Director Chandra, I'm wondering, how much do we need to update the computer systems to bring us into a modern day system that is scalable and updatable on the fly? If you were to get your gold ticket, how much would it cost to purchase a system that would put an end to all these difficulties?
Thank you, Senator Pickard. Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. Members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity. To answer that question, sir, we would go through an RFP process and we would do all the requirements for purchasing, but just ballpark, you're looking at about $800,000 to $900,000 initially, and then an annual contract, because nowadays everything is cloud computing, everything is storage, everything is online. So to create something that meets today's standards, we're looking at about close to $1 million on the front end, and then about $150,000 annually to maintain that service, updates, hosting, technology enhancements, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of a ballpark number.
All right.
On the front end, those things, the models are different, each company. So we'd have to go out and see what's out there, but that's about a general ballpark.
All right. I expected that to be an order of magnitude larger, given DMV can't fix their system for less than $40 million. So I'm glad to hear it's that cheap. So that raises a follow-up, and that is, with all the Biden bucks we're about to get $4 billion. Why would we charge $15 for renewals on the backs of the licensees? So it sounds like Senator Dennis has yet to make a killing at this. Why would we do that instead of using some of the Biden bucks to just pay for it up front? $1 million in our budget is, as we hear in Finance Committee, it's budget dust. It's less than a rounding error. Why don't we take some of this windfall that we're getting from the federal government that has, we already are sitting on a bunch that hasn't been spent. Why don't we use some of that instead of charging the licensees?
So this is Senator Dennis. I'll start there. And before I forget, I jumped the gun. I still have two other people that could make it up that are ready to present also, and might answer some of these questions as they go through their presentation. But let me, so as we know, technology, there's you've got the issue of putting in a new system, but then you also have a system of maintaining that system, and you also have a system of training on how to use that system. So it's always going to be an ongoing cost. So while you could possibly use some one-shot funds to do this, what we're looking for is a permanent solution. One of the things that I didn't talk about, and probably we'll talk about more in the next bill, with the pandemic, actually, we've increased the number of licensees, because people lost their jobs and they decided to switch over. And right now is for real estate prices are really great right now. Not a lot of inventory, but there's a lot of people selling, and so what we're looking for is permanent solutions to help be more efficient. And with the thousands of realtors out there, we really need to have that ability to do that.
And I completely agree with you. This is definitely an ongoing issue, particularly since technology, as your presentation mentioned, we roll into new technology, it seems every day. And so there's certainly an ongoing amount, but unlike the technology fee that we see in so many other agencies of $1 or $2, this is $15, and it's on the backs of the licensees instead of a technology fee on each real estate transaction, where now you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars typically, or in the leasing, it's tens of thousands of dollars changing hand. And so why not put it on a per transaction instead of a per licensee? It's an honest question to the extent that I'm just trying to figure out why you chose this instead of the other options. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have an ongoing technology fee, but if we have the Biden bucks that could pay for the system in a one shot and then continue with a technology fee to someone, can you just walk us through the rationale for why you chose what you chose?
Yeah, so actually, because we have two other people that need to present, I think as they go through their presentation, that might become clearer. So if it's okay with you, Madam Vice Chair, if I could have, I believe we have, let's see, Teresa McKee, who's with the Nevada Association of Realtors. And then we have, Sharath also has, the director also has some comments. So if we could do that first, I think that might answer some of these questions. Is that okay, Madam Vice Chair?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. So if we could have if Ms. McKee, if she could go.
Thank you, Senator Dennis. And thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. My name is Teresa McKee. And I'm the CEO of Nevada Realtors, the largest trade organization in Nevada with more than 18,000 members. I would also like to thank Senator Dennis, who's the realtor member, like he said, for working with us on this bill and agreeing to carry it on our behalf. I'd also like to thank the Business and Industry Director, Terry Reynolds, and Real Estate Administrator, Sharath Chandra, for their help in meeting with the realtors over the course of 3 years to discuss the challenges that face the licensing agency and find solutions to protect not only the real estate licensees, but to offer better protection for consumers. We have met with the division multiple times with varying degrees of leadership over the past 3 years to identify the problems with the division and with licensing issues and to find solutions for those. And we haven't always met eye to eye on the solutions, but over the course of the last 2 years, and especially the last year, we've really come to a meeting of the minds on what needs to be done. we have, as realtors, as a realtor organization, we have requested this technology fee be added. It's the #1 issue for our members in dealing with the division, that there just simply is not the technology that we should have to allow the transactions to go through smoothly. And that $15 technology fee will be payable every 2 years for the licensee. So that's $7.50 per year. This will help support the needed upgrades to the online services beyond just the simple licensing abilities currently in place. And I think, you know, when you hear from the practitioners like Heidi Kasama, the Assemblywoman, and Senator Dennis, and we have a couple other members who will also be talking, you can see how it will improve education tracking, the change of licenses between brokers, just some very simple things that should be able to be done online that aren't. And real estate should be one of the very top levels of technology that are available. It's one of the largest transactions that people make in their lives. And we shouldn't have to do pen to paper and snail mail licenses and other licensing related documents in order to make this facility function. So the real estate industry, as represented by Nevada Realtors, stands in full support of SB 276, and we ask that you vote in favor of this bill. Thank you.
And then if we can have the director give some comments.
Thank you, Senator Dennis. Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, again, Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. The technology, and I believe every member in this committee has been on different forums where we've talked about some of the challenges that the division has had in as far as technology. And Senator Dennis and Assemblywoman Kasama talked about it. We've got different components. We've got education, we've got licensing, we've got new licensee applications, we've got pre-licensing, post-licensing, continuing education. There's all these levels that the division deals with. And so trying to create something where we kind of bring the technology. So as a foundation, the technology is about 15 years old. So that's kind of what we're operating on. The vendor that we currently use has been sold and rebought and merged about 4 times since the time I've been here. So the technology has evolved, but our foundation has really remained the same. And I think it costs the division more to do anything, even small enhancements. And I think this pandemic has really kind of brought to light some of the deficiencies and have kind of created an existential crisis for us. Because when this pandemic first happened, one of our first things was to try to turn on everything in the software that we currently have that would enable people to do stuff online. And it's very limited. Anything more would require painstaking upgrades, and you'd have to get a specialist to recode, and it's just complicated. And so we turned everything on, but again, that's limited. And so then we had to rely on the mail. And of course, with the USPS challenges, the office being closed, folks trying to telecommute, it just has exasperated the situation. And we've done everything. I think we've tried to explore as many possibilities to go to every corner and try to figure out, email it to me, send it to me, take a picture, whatever we need to do to get folks renewed, licensed, we'll do. But I think there is a fundamental problem with the way we're operating technology-wise. And it's just not the front-facing technology, it's also the back-end, administrative work, the commission, the discipline, the letters that go out, the reminders that go out. It's just the entire package, not just the education. We've got schools on the front end, we've got new licensees coming in, we've got testing coming in, we've got post-licensing, continuing education, just the uploading of the certificates, that's just one piece of it. And then, of course, there's the education that we do that should be able to be provided seamlessly. It's a classic case of if someone can renew, why would you come to the division? And so trying to create a process where everything can be sent in, and really we're open. We want you to come in, but only if you want to. We don't need to force you to come in just to get a renewal. And so thinking of those things. And then long term, of course, we need to keep enhancing the technology. We need to build a reserve. So in case there are other things we need to do. So it's just not a one time, but it's a constant evolution and to be sustainable. And like Teresa talked about, it's $15, but it's $7.50 a year because it's a 2-year renewal. And it's really, it's only licensees. And so that was the idea. The goal is to not to burden the licensees, but also create a sustainable way for us to continue to enhance the technology and just operate more efficiently. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam Vice Chair, I also have David Tina, who just going to give some quick comments that from this, at least from the association.
Okay.
Good morning, Madam Vice Chair Neal and members of the committee. I do not want to repeat everything, so I say my name is Dave Tina. I am the legislative chair, but I'm also an owner broker of Urban Nest of 500 agents in Las Vegas. I did a quick survey with my members asking them about the $7.50 a year with my agents, and I got not one response of a no, because the division is doing a wonderful. Sharath is fighting against such backwards technology. Every one of them said yes, because it's renewal, it's changing to an LLC, it's changing the company. Every single realtor is in favor of this because we have to bring our technology up to the 2021 and the states surrounding us. And this cost is very minimal to get us where we want to be. Thank you.
So with that, Madam Vice Chair, we can resume questions.
Hey, I believe Senator Pickard will continue.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just if we could get into if we can persuade the powers that be, and it's in our hands actually to decide that we do this in a one-shot through the Recovery Act. I forget. I mean, I've been using the term Biden bucks just because it's a shortcut. I don't remember what the name of the various acts are, but if we could get that money to cover the one-shot, could we reduce the fee? I think that if we were to ask the realtors or the licensees rather, that even those that said, yeah, we'd pay this, because I agree completely, we need to bring it up to speed. But if we knew that there was other money available, so it didn't have to be, money out of our pocket, my guess is they would agree. Is there any appetite on your end to maybe seek one-shot money from the billions that we're getting to do that and lower this fee?
Well, this is Senator Dennis. While I think that, if we can find those funds, that would be great. But as you already know, we've got probably about 1,000 different entities all trying to figure out how to spend the same dollar. And we can't afford to say, yeah, we're going to do this later and put this off. We have, this is something that was needed, 2 years ago or 4 years ago.
Or 10.
Yeah, exactly. And I know as a realtor, pay $750 so I don't have to do all this other stuff. Just my little piece of it. And I know there's a million other things. So, I think the most important thing right now, because I know this is going to end up in finance anyways, that, we've got to make sure that the policy is right. And then we can figure out whether, as we look at the budgets overall, how we're going to be able to figure out who's going to get what and how that's going to work. So,
all right. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm certainly supportive of the bill. I just hate to, pass up an opportunity. I don't think we are spending the same dollar. I think there's plenty to go around with the $4 billion on top of all that we're likely to get. We've already received almost $30 billion this last year. That's been pumped into our economy. So my guess is there's going to be enough money to do it. I'm just trying to think about ways of reducing the cost of these realtors, because not all of them, in fact, the majority of them don't make a ton of money, and $15 might make a difference to some people. Anyway, Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. You keep saying 4 billion and the only thing pops in my mind is national deficit. Anyway, Senator Scheibel.
Thank you, Vice Chair Neal. I just wanted to clarify that this would be a permanent increase in the fee, correct? So this would also enable the real estate division to continue to keep up with technological advances beyond just the initial investment this year to bring them up to speed, but in coming years as technology improves or we change the other standards for real estate agents, add requirements, remove requirements for education, stuff like that, they would continue to get this infusion of money, which they would continue to be able to use for this purpose, right?
Correct. That, you know, as I had mentioned previously, the technology is something that it's not just a one shot. You got to continue to support it. You got to, not only that, you got to train people on how to use it. You have to make sure that you're doing all the updates and keeping that. And when it's time to switching to a new one, so being able to have the fee allows you to know for sure that it's going to be there, and then you can continually be your plans for the future to make sure that your technology keeps up is more secure. So, which is something that's very important in the industry.
Thanks.
Okay, so any additional questions? I know I have a couple. So, Senator Dennis, I had a question on the reversion, which is in section 4, line 9. I mean, it shows up in several of the accounts, but maybe, I don't know if I should ask this to Director Chandra, or has the reversion always been there, or has the money typically gone back to the general fund?
Morning, Madam Vice Chair. Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. I think that's a great question. And I think it ties into the next Senator Dennis's bill, but I'll try to answer this. Yes, so the reversion, the way Senator Dennis's bill is crafted, this one, SB 276, essentially says that the technology fee will remain in the division to be used for technology purposes. And so at the end of the year, if there's money in the account, then it just rolls over to the next year to be used. And so like some of the senators that talked about earlier, technology is an ongoing initiative. So even if we don't get the one-shot appropriation, we still need to build up to $1 million. So really, if you talk about a $15 technology fee across the licensees, it's about $250,000 a year. And so you would have to build that reserve. And even if you have ongoing maintenance of $150,000, $200,000, that leaves about $50,000, $55,000. And then you build that until, you know, like you said, there's more technology requirements for education or whatever the new standards are, would use that. And so that's the idea, is the account stays with the division and then it rolls over to the next year if there's money left over.
Yeah, I thank you for that. And I understand that. And this is probably because Senator Dennis has been on finance for a while. I guess I was just wondering, has the real estate division always kept their funds since you're an executive agency, or does it go into the general fund? Is this a new change? I guess that's how I should have phrased it the first time. Is this a new change to keep your money?
Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. Simple answer is yes. And I'll let Senator Dennis speak.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the challenges, and this will become even more apparent in the next bill, is that, you know, the way that the funds have come in to the division, and then a portion of that stays with, you know, to fund the division, and the rest has been going back. And so there hasn't been any additional funds in there to be able to do this. So for them to do technology, they would have to put a technology request in, which, you know, they would still have to do all that stuff, but this would ensure that the funding would be there to be able to do those projects.
Okay. I have another question, but I'll let Senator Hardy go. Senator Hardy?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. To your point, and when I look at the $250,000 per year, that's $500,000 in a 2-year period of time. So the technology fee is going to accrue until it's stopped. At what point do we say we want to sunset this fee? Is this a 2-year thing that we're suggesting now? What are we, at what point do we say, we've got $2 million in it, we haven't spent it. So what guardrails do we have on this? Because bottom line is it's going to accrue. And unless we have some idea of, what the technology fee is, because if we're looking at this technology fee to buy new computers, to buy new hardware, to buy a new place for it, at what point or where do we say this technology fee is or isn't allowed to be used? And I don't know that you've got an answer other than we're just going to save money in a special account that will be, I hate to use the word slush fund, but that's what it sounds like, as a technology slush fund, because we don't know where we're going to use it yet.
So this is Senator Dennis. Well, we know where it needs to be spent now, and the director can address specifically. But as I mentioned before, these are going to be ongoing costs. I don't anticipate that there's going to be this money that's going to continue to accumulate because it's going to be spent on keeping that technology up to date. Up till now, that hasn't been the case. They've had to come. And sometimes they get the funding, sometimes they don't. And as in the technology that we have today in the division, that hasn't been able to keep up with the demand. And so I don't anticipate that this is just going to continue to get big, because it needs to be spent. It needs to be spent now. And that ongoing cost is always going to be there. But the director could probably address specifically how that works.
Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. Madam Vice Chair, through you. Again, the idea is not to develop a slush fund per se, but really the idea is to do the technology enhancements. There's going to be a front end cost to it that is far exceeds what we were going to collect. And then as we go through the process, there is going to be a maintenance and a hosting service, and you've got to pay to maintain those services. And so that the remainder money that we collect every year is going to maintain that. There may be some money that's left over that can accumulate a little bit, which then can be used for enhancing that technology. So I don't believe it's designed in any way to accumulate, and I just do not anticipate that happening. The idea is to use it for technology, not just to buy hardware, but really technology, because as the industry changes, you've got to enhance the technology. You've got to use other upgrades to, whether you increase the education requirements or there's, applications for new licensees, whether it's pre-licensing, schools, continuing education, whatever those technology things that are done, we're going to use this fee to actually enhance the technology that goes towards developing that software or that extra, set of tools that we'll need. But also on the back end helps the process. So I just don't see the money being just accumulates over time to any significant amount.
In addition to Senator Dennis, they still have to present budgets to the legislature. They still have to, give a budget to the governor. So, there's still that oversight as far as the money going in and how it's being spent.
Madam Chair, Vice Chair, I appreciate the elucidation of, how it's going to be used and where it's going to be used. I think that's wonderful. I think to say, it's going to go to a good use is very honorable. I appreciate the explanation. And at the same time, I recognize that we're making an ongoing fund that's going to last for more than 2 years. And we have, in 2 years, we'll have another legislative session. And we'll have an idea, how much money we used and what it went for, and we'll have an accounting right now, if we pass this as is, there's no accounting. There's no going back to the general fund, for instance. If we have leftover of $100,000, it doesn't go back to the general fund. Budget dust as it may be. So I think that, you know, if we have something that says, okay, this is a great idea and it's a good idea, and I think it is, then at what point do we say this is our bank account that we have? And at what point do we say we just want to keep gathering money in it? Or, you know, what's our responsibility to our people who are paying this, to the ratepayers, as it were, the people who right now they say they want it. What are they going to say in 2 years? And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying this is a 2-year thing, and then we have a reporting in the next session. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you for that. Administrator Chandra, I have a couple of questions, or I don't know, Senator Dennis, you want to answer it, but I think these are probably better to Administrator Chandra or some other folks. All right. So in the bill, it's a couple of questions. So it shows up, so section 17, sub 4, there's this line in the bill that talks about all claims, and it shows up in several places. What are the kinds of claims that come against these accounts, where you're saying the language in the bill basically says all claims shall be paid in the same manner, such and such. So what are the kinds of claims that will potentially be attached to this $15 fee? Because this is all going in as a lump sum. So I just wanted to understand the kinds of claims that are being brought under these chapters.
Senator Neal, I'm trying to find the section
okay,
that you're referencing.
Wait, let me pull it up. So if
On
you
page 12 of the bill.
Yeah, page 12. So lines 15 through 16, right before section 18.
That, Senator Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division, that I believe is just standard language that I think it's referenced throughout our statute. All claims against this account must be paid. I think it's general practice, and I'm not sure it has anything to do with this technology fee per se, but I think it's repeated across all the statutes. I think it's standard language that I believe is in the next bill too. It says all claims against the account must be paid as other claims against the state are paid. I'm not sure it references, and you're probably right. I don't know if it references just the technology, but just the account in general.
No, I'll clarify, because if this whole thing is about savings, right? And the additional fee is about getting more money into the accounts. When I saw the claim language, the question that popped up in my mind was, what are the kinds of claims that typically pop up? Will that eat away at the fee? Because I'm separating the fee because this is what you guys are adding in, but this will then just go into, you say it's specifically for technology, but that language seems to just grab everything. And so that's why I was asking. Seems to be a catch-all provision that just is a part of the account.
This is Senator Dennis. That probably would be more appropriate to ask legal counsel that drafted the bill. As we know, as already been mentioned by the director, there are some language that just gets reused in the thing. So might be better to ask that question to see why they put that in there.
Okay, well, I'll save that. So I'll just go to my next question, which is on the timeshare piece, the NRS 119. So it's NRS 119A200. So in timeshare, there's also a local government piece where they're allowed to take fee and get revenue. So I was wondering about the application there, if they're going to be sharing in this $15 fee, since you got in that section, you just dropped the whole chapter in 119A. And so in the way that it reads, it's like it will apply to all subsections within that chapter, which includes developers, local governments. And so I wanted to get a real life understanding of the application of this fee, knowing that provision exists in law.
Sharad Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. Madam Vice Chair, so the way I read this, the application of this technology fee, so in timeshare, the Real Estate Division licenses timeshare agents and timeshare representatives. There's two categories. The timeshare agents are the closest you would come to a real estate agent. They have to take a test, and it's actually a license. So the technology fee just goes on that license type. So we've got two sectors in timeshare, and these are just licensees. It doesn't apply to developers, builders, all of the other companies that register with the division. It's only for a license. So in timeshare, the timeshare sales agent is the licensee, and this $15 technology fee would just go on that license. So at the time of renewal, just like a real estate licensee or anybody else, at the time when they renew every 2 years, there would be a $15 technology fee, which works out to about $7.50. So that's the only thing that this is applicable to. I don't believe there was any, my reading of it doesn't apply to any of the other companies or builders or developers.
And so local governments are excluded since they are allowed to collect a licensing fee in 119A 200?
That is my understanding, yes. This is only for the licensees that apply to the division for renewal.
Okay, well, that was the last of my questions. Senator Pickard, really quick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to confirm that Director Chandra, that you said that this technology fee will generate about $250,000 a year. So it'll take 4 years before we can actually make the change. Is that correct?
Technically, yes, sir, that is correct. Again, we may have to think through on the front end if we can maybe borrow against the, get an appropriation from the general fund to get this started and then repay. I think that's something that we have to discuss with the budget folks and see if that's even possible. But yes, technically would have to build a reserve to actually use it. But I'm sure there could be some discussions further on the budget.
All right, I appreciate that. And so I would encourage Senator Dennis to use your position in the Finance Committee to see if we can't spend, I think I calculated it out to be 0.02% of the dollars we're about to receive. I completely support this. I would like to see it done this year. So I would love to see if we can't figure out a way to get it done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Senator Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I mean, to the points being made, if we get the Finance Committee given more money to play with, I'll call it, and we get the $1 million to institute the change right now, then what becomes of the $250,000 per year, other than, just in case we need it? Are you saying that if we get the $1 million, then we don't need this? Or are you saying if we get the $1 million from Keith Pickard's Biden bucks verbiage, then what are we using the money for, and what guardrails do we have on that money?
This Senator Dennis, as I mentioned before, there's going to be ongoing costs. So there isn't any money that's just going to be sitting there at least not all of it in a year, because you're going to have the upgrade fees that have to be paid every year, the support fees. The fee could be used for the people that actually maintain the system. So there's all of those things have to continue to happen. This isn't a one-shot thing. You put in the system and then you have no other costs. That's the reason for the fee. If it was just a one-time thing, we would just be asking for a one-time amount of dollars. But in order to be able to keep up with the technology, we're going to need that money to continue to come in every year so that it can be spent on maintaining the system.
So if I may, what I hear you saying is we need $1 million now to upgrade the system, and we need $250,000 every year to upgrade the system that we now have upgraded on a one-shot deal. Am I missing something? We need the 1 million now instead of in 4 years, and then we need to upgrade yearly.
This is Senator Dennis. Yeah, we need to put the system in, which is the bigger cost, and then we need the maintenance. So, and you know, we're going off of estimates of what that's going to cost. There hasn't been, you know, until this is approved, they can't do the IFP and the IRP, and to be able to do that. And so, you know, and knowing how much those ongoing costs are going to be, all that is part of that process. You know, there can, and it still has to go through the budget process and has to be approved every 2 years on how they're going to spend the funds in there. So there is that oversight, you know, as far as the budget issues.
Oh, let me ask it this way. Are you asking or not asking for $1 million from the money we're going to get from the federal government in the Finance Committee during this session?
So right now we're asking for this committee to look at the policy on whether this makes sense to do. And then we're going to have to go to the Finance Committee to figure out what the, you know, we don't know what the rules are on that funding that's coming. We don't know if it can be used for that or not. I mean, we are not asking in this budget for $1 million today because that was something that was not contemplated when we were putting together the bill. If that is something that wants to be, you know, that can be discussed or whatever as we go through this process in the budgeting process in this session, then that's something that we can look at. But at the end of the day, we need to change the way that we do technology in the division so that we can be up to date and be able to service the realtors who make their living with this and need this help. So that's kind of where we're at.
I agree with you. I think if you don't ask, you don't get. And if you don't ask now, you may not get. And so I think we would be disingenuous not asking for $1 million now, and then looking at the ongoing expenses that you've so well described as needed. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Senator Settlemeyer?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to ask. I just wanted to get a couple things on the record. I appreciate the concept of $1 million to establish said program, and I understand, and Senator Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, that your concept would be potentially to seek $1 million for this technology, so that way to help bring us into the future and the department into the future, and then have the fee for the ongoing cost structure. I just wanted to make sure I got that on the record, because I tend to agree 100% with that. We should not, in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion, be looking at the idea of these revenues coming in, some people call them Biden bucks, should be not ever utilized for ongoing cost. These should be for situations where we get into it. And I was just making sure that that was on the record, and if you agree with that statement. But also myself, I'd love to see an amendment, $1 million for that. But I also think we need to look at the DMV and DETR that are critically failing the citizens of the state of Nevada. And we need to look at how to get them the technology as well, potential out of those funds. I just wanted to see what your thoughts were, Senator Dennis, on that point.
Yeah, thank you. I think I mentioned this earlier, that, you know, when you put technology in, you can use one-shot funds to put technology in, but there's an ongoing cost that needs to occur. And as you already mentioned, we don't know, well, we know what the needs are. We don't know how we can spend that money that's coming. And so, this bill doesn't pretend to try to figure that out. What we're trying to figure out with this bill is just how is it that we can, on an ongoing basis, be able to have this technology in place and maintain it. And should the legislature decide that this is how, that we want to do some things and with one-shot monies, because I agree with you. You can't do ongoing costs. That's not that doesn't work in this situation. We're looking for an ongoing solution to the problem, which is having the appropriate technology so that people in the industry can get their job done in the most efficient manner possible.
Thank you, Senator Dennis. I greatly appreciate that answer. I look forward to trying to work with you on this point. I could actually see myself voting for the technology fee for this particular purpose, but I would like to make sure that we include some other things in there that are critical to the citizens of the state of Nevada. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, for allowing me to ask that question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So I think we've run the spectrum on how to be prudent with federal money and state money. So we will go ahead to the lines who have called in for support for SB 276.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support of SB 276, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 661, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Yes, this is Keith Lynham, Keith, last name Lynham, Lynam. Good morning, Vice Chair Neal and members of the committee. I would like to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak in support of SB 276. I would also like to thank Senator Dennis for bringing this bill forward, as well as as he mentioned, bringing the professional standards to a higher level for us in a bill in previous sessions. So we appreciate that. The need has been well established. I think the great job on Senator Dennis and Assemblywoman Kasama's part to bring the examples, as well as Teresa McKee and David Tina. So I just want to talk about one thing, and I think it brings up a couple points. I'm also a senior faculty member in Las Vegas, and as part of that, we have to submit classes to the division for approval. And in doing so, I submitted a class with materials with a few PDF files and a video clip, and very nicely I was called, even jovially so, asking me, please do not email those. They're too big and they will crash the system. They went on to say I could open it up on my phone, but I'm afraid that the system would crash. That was only just a few years ago that occurred. And so I just want to make one thing really clear, because there's been maybe some confusion on one-shot funds to this technology fee. The industry is begging for this fee. The industry is badly in need of this fee. And as part of my pleasures that I get when I teach is I get to talk to literally thousands of realtors across Nevada. And they have all asked why we have to renew, why we have to submit CE credits, why we have to change licensing, why we have to do all of these things the way we do it. And that's why we need this. And so just to be very clear, we are asking for this. This has not been a snap decision. The administrator and the industry
2 minutes are up.
Throughout the, and it's great that we are here, and we would like to have this support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And I forgot to say this. So rather than the 3 minutes, it's the 2 minutes per caller. And since Senator Dennis has very similar bills, we will try to keep the testimony 10 minutes support, 10 minutes opposition, 10 minutes neutral, to then get to the second bill where we'll probably have very similar conversations.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Caller with the last three digits of 161, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Jared Davis, JARRYD, DAVIS. Good morning, Vice Chair Neal and members of the Senate Commerce and Labor Committee. I'd like to speak this morning to urge support for SB 276, authored by Senator Mo Dennis. Technology and related regulations in the industry are often outdated and reflect a pre-internet reality. And if not properly remedied, these shortcomings can adversely affect consumers and real estate professionals by denying government officials modern tools that can help them more effectively conduct their work. The provisions in this bill would help modernize regulation and technology in the real estate industry, which aligns closely with Zillow's efforts to promote innovation and a more digital real estate process. Furthermore, by enacting a $15 technology fee and keeping the derived funds in the division's bank account, it can help modernize its technological capabilities and boost its annual income, all the while allowing the division to be a better steward and more ably serve real estate professionals and consumers alike. We believe at Zillow that the economy and the real estate market of today will require continuous innovation and leveraging technology to stay relevant. So SB 276 represents a much needed new approach to support modernization efforts by government officials who we know are working diligently to serve Nevada's consumers and real estate professionals in the internet age. Zillow would like to thank everyone this morning and please urge lawmakers to support SB 276. Thank you.
Caller with the last three digits of 522. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Vice Chair Neal and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Atlas, JENNIFER ATLAS. I'm representing ARDA, the American Resort Development Association. We're in support of SB 276. This bill will help the division to increase its revenue stream and move forward with much needed modernization. This will benefit both the industry as well as consumers. We appreciate your time today and urge your support of SB 276.
Thank you, caller. Caller with the last three digits of 199. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last three digits of 199. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. Thank you. Please begin.
Brad Spires, BRADSPIRES. Did you get it?
Yes, thank you. Please begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Appreciate your time. Without going down a long road of recapping, just briefly, we worked last session with Senator Dennis on the bill that increased our pre-licensing and continuing education requirements across the board. And our goal continues to be to increase the professionalism of our members that serve our communities. And when we did that, we understood that this would create an additional burden on the real estate division to process these additional continuing educations and newly created classes. And since last session, our real estate license counts have grown steadily, and we really have now reached the pre-recession highs. However, less and less resources have been allocated to service the licensees who are really contributing to the growth of our industry and to the state economy. And since it's been 15 years, it really has limited the division's ability to do their job. So now's the time for us to help. We are in full support, and as the president of the association, I'd like to say that we are 100% behind this bill, and thanks Senator Dennis.
Thank you, caller. We are currently in support of SB 276. To testify in support, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Vice Chair, you have no more callers in support at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will go to anyone who is signed in opposition.
To testify in opposition of SB 276, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, to testify in opposition of SB 276, please press star 9 now. Vice Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Okay, so we will move to neutral.
To testify neutral on SB 276, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. Senator Dennis, any closing comments on SB 276?
I think you've heard, thank you, Madam Chair, Senator, for the record. I think you've heard that there's a huge need that our folks in the industry are asking for this, and so that we can better do the work that needs to be done. And so I hope this is, you're going to hear similar things in the next bill, but these are things that are important to make sure that people can get the work done that they need to do. And there's a huge need, as was mentioned earlier right now, so urge support of the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will close the hearing on SB 276, open the hearing on SB 282. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I'm still Mo Dennis, and I still represent Senate District 2 in Clark County, and I'm pleased to be here today to present Senate Bill 282, which seeks to require that certain money collected by the Real Estate Division of the Department of Business and Industry be used solely for the purpose of carrying out the provisions governing the profession and occupations regulated by the division. And I still have Samum and Kasama here also to help answer any questions, as well as Director Sharath Chandra, Administrator of the Real Estate Division, Tiffany Banks, General Counsel for the Nevada Association of Realtors, Teresa McKee, CEO of the Nevada Association of Realtors, and David Tina, Legislative Chair of the association, that will give brief comments and also be able to help answer any questions. As you know, we are facing unprecedented budget shortfall at a time when demand for services has increased more than ever, while several federal funding sources have emerged to help state and local governments ensure business continuity during this challenging time. Together, these federal funding sources have given the state an invaluable opportunity to confront the challenges caused by the pandemic. However, these sources are temporary. Therefore, SB 282 would ensure that the Real Estate Division will maintain a dedicated funding source which is funded by each applicant for the issuance or renewal of certain licenses, certificates, permits, and registrations issued by the division. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And as was mentioned, during the pandemic, actually, we've increased the number of licensees, and realtors have been selling homes even though the inventory is low at this time. But it's been a good time for real estate. I'd like to discuss the substantive provisions of the bill. However, there is an amendment available on Nellis that Mr. Chandra will present to the committee. Senate Bill 282, as introduced, creates various administration accounts within the State General Fund administered by the division. Any interest and income earned must be credited to the accounts, and any remaining balance to the account does not revert to the State General Fund. In addition, the money deposited in the separate accounts must be used solely for the purpose of defraying the cost and expenses incurred in carrying out the administration of the respective professions and occupations governed by the division. As I mentioned, there is an amendment in this part of it that Mr. Chandra will present. The bill also has what we just discussed in the previous one, the $15 technology fee imposed to each applicant for the issuance or renewal of certain licenses, certificate, permits, registrations issued by the Real Estate Division. This is not an additional $15 technology. It's the same one, just happens to be included in this bill. So with that, I'd like first to give Assemblywoman Kasama, she'd like to give any comments, and then if we could go to Mr. Chandra on the amendment, because I think that'll help answer some of the questions.
Thank you, Senator Dennis, Vice Chair Neal, and committee members. Again, I think Senator Dennis gave a great recap. It's basically becoming a self-funding division now. And I look forward to Director Sharaf's input as well. I think we're one of the few, if not the only, departments that have all of our funds coming through the general fund while other divisions are self-funded. So this bill corrects to be self-funded plus adding the technology fee. And I yield my time now to Director Chandra.
Good morning, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Again, Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. I want to sincerely thank Senator Dennis and the Association of Realtors for this bill and for the considerable amount of time and effort they've had to put into this. Before I start, I see Director Reynolds in the Zoom call. I just want to give him a brief minute to kind of give the committee just an overview from BNI's perspective, and then I'll go into some of the technical details of the bill, the way Senator Dennis has crafted it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandra. This is Terry Reynolds, Director for the Department of Business and Industry. I wanted to kind of just do a kind of a short overview of how we got here. We've been working with the real estate community, as indicated, for the last several years in trying to come up with an overall solution for the real estate division and how to really properly fund it. Over the years, we have seen basically through the recession kind of a drop back in the number of employees that we have within the division. Just when we think we can get ahead and licensees are increasing, we ended up in the pandemic and we had to take over a 20% hit to this general fund funded division. And basically, we've had to lay off people, and it's really kind of hurt us during a peak time within the real estate. So we were discussing, as we have been with the real estate community, on how to fund this. Over the last probably 10 to 12 years, the real estate division has basically sent back to the general fund over $90 million above and beyond what it takes to run the agency. So we generally, with the real estate division, collect upwards of 7 to 8 million, but we only have expenditures of about 4.5 to 5 million within that agency. So what I think Sharaf's going to tell you is that we would like to see the transition to a fee-funded agency, and then take whatever excess above and beyond what a normal reserve would be to go back into the general fund. So I think that's really the best way to operate this, to be able to do the things that we need to do to keep up with the increases when the market increases, and then back to where we were when it's not increasing. We have, and Sharaf can go through the numbers of employees we have and where we're at today versus where we were back trying to come out of the recession. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. We don't know how the stimulus funds, frankly, are going to impact us. We have not been provided that information in terms of what is coming. We know that there's about $5 million coming into the state, but we don't know what the rules are for the use of that money. And we hope that that will come during the time that you're still sitting as a legislative body, so that there'll be decisions made and we can look at it in the context of what's happening across the state. With that said, I'm happy to turn it back to Sharaf and have him go into the amendment he's looking at.
Yeah, Administrator, go ahead. I think because you're an executive branch agency, I think it's very important to spell out the employees associated. And I would also like you to put what is the history on why you are an executive branch agency?
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the Real Estate Division. Briefly, I'll just talk about the conceptual amendment and this bill that Senator Dennis has brought forward, just to align those two things, and then I'll talk a little more about where the division is as far as like the budget and kind of our current situation and how we've kind of come over time. So very briefly, Section 1 of this bill, really all it does is it essentially says that we're creating an account in the division, which is in the conceptual amendment, we call it the real estate administration account. Essentially, the way the bill was crafted, every chapter of law that was 645, C, D, was created a separate account, but really the idea is to create an account in the division and where all the monies that we generate and collect goes into that account against which we could balance out our expenditures. And then the overage, like Director Reynolds indicated, after we keep a reserve, could be, talked about a reversion to the general fund. The way it is currently structured, the money is kind of bifurcated into a couple of different pots. And, we only get a certain amount of money, which we balance our budgets, and then the rest of it goes directly to the general fund. And over the years, we've had these massive cuts that have resulted in just the division being stretched beyond any reasonable way of operating. So that is kind of what the bill does. Section 1 really talks about the creation of the account. And then the amendment really, all it does is, because we've already discussed the technology fee, essentially this amendment says that technology fee goes into that same account as opposed to the previous bill where we had to create a separate account. This just flows right into the division. And so the same changes that are in 645 are repeated across all the sections of law. There's one section that talks about 116, which is the HOAs. That really is already self-funded. And for most of you folks that know, the division has the HOAs also under it, and that's separately funded under 116. So we just removed that language from here because I believe the drafters probably thought it was one general account, but it is two separate accounts. And so those are the only modifications in this account. And there's also a education account that was a separate account, which is just now being combined into 645 real estate administration account. So that's really the conceptual amendment that makes the changes to the bill. The nothing in the intent of the bill has been altered. It's just the mechanics of how that money has been talked about in the bill is being changed in this amendment. I'll stop there as far as the actual amendment and the bill is. And Madam Vice Chair, I'll just quickly kind of summarize where the division was. Back before the financial crisis, the division had about 37,000 licensees. We're all the way up to 40,000 now. Right when the recession hit, I believe the division went down to about 24 employees from a high of 32 in the real estate. And then we were given a couple of more positions back. And then we've remained at 26 employees throughout the rest of the time. So essentially, we've had about a 30% cut, and we've never recovered from that. This budget cycle, we've had to cut about 400,000 in resources. We've lost 3 positions, a deputy administrator position, and so the goal is to try to get the division to a point where we can actually sustain operations, build a reserve, and actually do the things that we wanted to do. And the $15 technology fee just adds that resource also towards achieving that goal. I think that is just a general overview. I can give more details. I think it's probably appropriate if we stop and maybe answer questions, and that way I can be more targeted in my responses.
Okay, Senator Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things. I mean, we've kind of hashed out most of it. This has to do with the now the changes at the division and at the department. Mr. Reynolds, you mentioned that we moved 90 million back to the general fund. Was that just from the real estate division, or was that across all of B&I?
Terry Reynolds, for the record, that was just the real estate division. So over time, the real estate division has generated more revenues, basically, than their expenditures to operate the division. So they've actually returned quite a bit of money back to the general fund over the years.
All right. So with that in mind, are we unable to do the technology upgrades and holding the positions and making sure that we have enough employees to service the needs of the licensees? Is this bill fixing that structure so that we can now retain those employees and spend the money on the technology? Because it certainly seems like we could have changed this system over 90 times in the last biennium, and we didn't even need the last bill had we been able to keep that money. Does this bill fix that problem?
Terry Reynolds for the record. Senator Pickard, thank you for that question. This is what the intent of these two items are. The first one you just heard on the technology fee, and the second one to be able to return the revenues back to the division to be able to support that. As you're probably aware, 98% of our divisions are fee funded. Real estate and labor are the only ones that are not. The Labor Office of Labor Commissioner. Real estate is kind of a hybrid. It has the common interest community side, which is not self-funded, or excuse me, is self-funded, and the real estate side is general funded. So we're hoping to close that gap. All the way through the recession, we actually generated more income in the real estate side of that, and to be able to support the division, but we were tied to the general fund so that any funds in excess of that went back into the general fund, and we could not carry up a reserve or be able to support those activities that we needed to do. The real estate community, as you know, is asked, why does this happen, and why are we put in that position? And so we have met with them over the years and trying to work on their concerns and be able to come up with a solution that basically provides them the services that they have for the fees that they're paying into the division. So to answer your question, yes, this would rectify that issue. We don't want to have it all impact the general fund, so we want funds to go back into the general fund above and beyond the expenditures. But still, this would come a long ways to fixing that problem.
All right, I really do appreciate that answer, because this was one of the questions that I had years ago when I was first involved in this endeavor in this industry. Why were we sending so much money back when other boards that I dealt with, like the contractors board, generally don't, or at least they're self-funded. They don't get to store money. Any excess goes back to the general fund, but they are allowed to cover all of their operating expenses, including upgrades, expansions, employees, that sort of thing. And so what I think you just did was you convinced me we don't need 276. We don't need SB 276. We've got the money. So if this is already, if we're moving money back and this bill fixes that, we don't have to add $15 to anybody to be able to pay for the systems, because we could have done that 90 times over. Now, I'm not saying I want to kill 276. We desperately need the infrastructure. But I think that when we listen to Mr. Neal and Mr. Spires and the others saying we desperately need this fee, what they really meant was we need the technology upgrades, not we need to send more money to government. And so I would strongly encourage everyone involved in these two bills to revisit why we're doing this. And if 282 fixes the problem of moving money out of the division that really should stay there in order to pay for these things without raising a dollar on anyone else, I think we just fixed our problem. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you for that. Senator Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Mr. Reynolds, along that same line, what's the difference that would have not occurred had we been fee-based for the number of employees in the pandemic versus what we had to go down to set 26 or whatever it was employees, would we have been able to retain those employees in the real estate division?
Terry Reynolds, for the record, Senator Hardy, that is the case. We would have been able to, had we been able to keep the fees that came in to the division, we would have been able to retain those employees.
And then along that same line, if we had a technology need right now, would we be able to afford the dollars to upgrade the technology issue that we have and be able to have ongoing funds to do the upgrades that we've talked about in another bill?
There's two components to that, Senator. This is Terry Reynolds for the record. I want to make sure that we, the real estate community, is assured that there's going to be technology improvements. And so the fee was going to be, the technology fee is dedicated to making sure that those technology improvements happen. We can, with the current bill that we're talking about, which would take monies that are collected in the division coming back into the division to be able to use for that, we could add that technology fee. What we're trying to do, though, is to keep the general fund somewhat whole in terms of expenses to revenues. And so we didn't want to create a bigger hole in the general fund. And that's the amendment that Administrator Sharath has gone over. So we can look at balancing that and making sure that we have the funds for technology improvements, but also to run the division from the funds, not in increase, but from the funds that are collected, and be able to use those funds within the real estate division. So that's the issue that we're looking at and making sure that can happen. So we appreciate that question. I think that's the heart of whether do we need to have a technology fee. Now, I have no problem with reviewing that over a couple of years and making sure that we're, that if we go to approving the current bill that we're talking about, that we are not basically creating a lot more funding than we need and having huge reserves and having quote unquote that slush fund that you had mentioned. So I think that, we're happy to go through and have a review of that every 2 years, every biennium, to make sure that we are proceeding in an efficient fiscal manner that we need to be at when we collect those funds back into the division.
I appreciate that. One of the things I appreciated was hearing that that concept existed, and if we had too much money, it would go back into the general fund. So we, in essence, have those guardrails that I was talking about in another bill. I think that's a correct perception, if I can ask that question.
Terry Reynolds for the record. Senator Hardy, you're absolutely correct. And that's one of the things that we want to achieve here is we want to make sure that, and that's the basis of the amendment that Administrator Sharath Chandra has put forward, is to be able to have that balancing between the expenditures to run the division and the funds going back in above and beyond those expenditures to the general fund. And so we're happy to have that under review. And it's very similar to what we did with the Athletic Commission when we took them out of the general fund and had them supported by their fees that they collect. Senator Liprielli and I worked on that balance to make sure that would happen. And then we reviewed it going down the road to make sure that was correct and they didn't have, this huge ending fund balance that was being carried over, that we had the right balance of reserve to expenditures within the division.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you for that. So I had a quick question, and I guess I'm just coming from a different perspective of, like the way this conversation has been framed around SB 282, as if the general fund is this metaphorical overseer that is siphoning off money from the real estate division. And what I'm trying to understand and get a grapple on is you're an executive branch agency. I want to understand the history on why you were an executive branch agency. I don't see a fiscal note. This conversation has been that Administrator Chandra literally drafted the amendment to reduce the fiscal impact to the general fund. And basically this is a power shift. I understand that the commission, the real estate fee side generates money, but this is a power shift in order to hold on to money, be self-funded, and not have to start from ground zero. And so I want to know why there isn't a fiscal note on this bill, because clearly it's going to be a hole, right, in the general fund or whatever that revenue that is expected to revert every year from this account. And so I really want to understand that part of this bill.
Terry Reynolds for the record. Chair Neal, let me basically say there will be a fiscal note on this, and we are working on preparing that. So very good point, and I agree with you. Keep in mind that we went through the recession. We were building our budget back up. We've been discussing since 2017, and then prior to that, the state had increased taxes during that time. The real estate community was looking at what was going to happen during that time to be able to, what the cumulative effect was going to be on their realtors and their agents. The real estate division has not raised fees since 2003. And so, that's part of that issue. I think they've been running very efficiently, but they've also been producing revenues above and beyond that. And I think that's something that we looked at with the administration during that time. And we're looking at coming back with an overall plan. And here we are. I think the pandemic has really kind of emphasized the need to be able to have control over their own destiny in terms of the fees that they generate, but still returning funds back to the general fund. So we're not trying to hurt the general fund. We're basically trying to have a steady income stream coming back to the real estate division so they can operate, because they've had to swing from 30 positions down to 26 and now being cut another percentage of positions. And so we've been lucky to be able to take some of the individuals that are working in the real estate division and transfer them over to other areas. But it's really kind of a Band-Aid approach. So we're looking to try to settle this and stabilize this out so that we don't have these swings. And here you're in a position where the real estate market has really kind of on fire, and you've got 40,000 plus licensees, but you're reducing your staffing levels down 20-30%. And so that's been very difficult. And we're trying to just come up with a solution to be able to stabilize the funding with that division.
So let me ask you this, because in Administrator Chandra's, in his amendment, it originally had 300,000 and then it said ability to retain 100,000. What's the effect of that retention, right? Because what is your prospective fiscal note that's going to be to the general fund if this goes forward? And then I have a second question.
Madam Vice Chair, Sharat Chandra, Administrator for the division. So essentially, the piece that you were looking at was an education fund. So essentially, licensees have $40 that they pay toward every 2 years towards a fund that pays for it's called a recovery fund. So essentially that had an artificially high balance of 300,000 that needed to be maintained over time. And the way fiscal folks were interpreting it, it was $300,000 just sits there every year. So all we were doing was just adjusting that so that that money always stayed with the division. So it was just adjusting the fiscal amount of what that balance should be over time. But really, the money all stays in the division. I think the larger question was, like Director Reynolds said, is how do we reduce the gap with the general fund? Because right now we're contributing X amount of dollars to the general fund, but at the same time the division is just reduced to such a level of staffing and resources that how do we adjust back but yet be contributing a certain amount of money to the general fund without hurting the division? And so what does that balance look like?
So thank you for that. And so this is more of a comment because, listen, I understand wanting to control your destiny, right? But what I have concerns with are the pandemic. People are, they're saying they don't want to do the Band-Aid, but ultimately, when we start looking at federal money for whatever it is to walk into a state to then help fix one-time issues that we have that are long-term, we run into another issue, right? And I just, because I feel like it's very narrow, because the assumption is we're gonna get this federal money, as my colleague wants to call it, the Biden bucks, but we're gonna get this federal money that everybody feels will fill the whole of the general fund. But the question that always looms in my mind is, when this federal money expires, and it will dry up, or it will have limitations, what then happens to the general fund, which is the state's money that funds services? What then happens to that whole? Because individuals are thinking about right now, but they're not thinking about 2023. They're not thinking about when the money goes away, what should the state do and perform mechanically to, stabilize themselves and put themselves in a position where if you take $80 million because you want to control your destiny, where does the state then get the $80 million 2 years from now? And I think this is it's a broader issue that's happening right now, because everybody sees this waterfall, and I'm just like, yeah, okay, waterfalls dry up, and the state has a responsibility to stabilize itself and stand on its own 2 feet. That crutch of federal money is not going to be there forever. It is also has a very short window on it. And I worry, because we act like it's gonna save this state and fix our already existing issues with managing our budget and being able to effectively fund all of the services and agencies that we need to take care of. And I just, I don't know. I hear what you're saying, but I think on the broader context, I think this bill is just drawing out for me the broader context of how we treat money in this state and how we effectively plan, and how we need to be thinking about the future in regards to what happens when it's just us, when there's no umbrella of money coming down and we have to fend for ourselves as a state. And when you take away money from the general fund, and I'm trying to figure out where is it going to come from after the federal money expires, that's a real concern for me, because we're doing that not just on this account, but on several accounts. And I think it's unwise. I really do. I do. So I get it. You want to have control your destiny. Okay. But I think we need to be thinking about the broader scale of, if every agency does this and pulls their money out of the general fund, and we're assuming that the federal money will save the day, then we are all walking around with blinders on and in denial. And I feel like I'm living in 2011, where people felt like, let the federal government save me. And then at the end, we didn't have any money when they left and walked away. But whatever, I'm done.
Madam Chair, this is Senator Dennis. So let me put a little bit different twist on that, because I get that, right? But what I'm seeing is we've got one specific division that's put $90 million back into the general fund, and they are being unfairly budgeted concerning everybody else, because as was already said, 98% of those divisions are already self-funded. So we're asking the realtors to do more than everybody else. And so what this bill is trying to do is saying, let's put the realtors on the same level as everybody else. And then, so when you say, what do we do to with the general budget? So if the realtors aren't putting that money in, where's that coming from? Well, we as a state need to be budgeting across the whole state, and not just say, okay, you realtors, we're going to ask you to do a lot more than everybody else. We're going to ask you to pay to take all your. We're going to ask you to do with less, with to do more things with less, and we're going to take all your money and use that to fill holes in the general budget. What this is saying is, at least if they're going to have to sacrifice and do more with less, then at least make that the same as what everybody else is having to do, because it's unfair that we're asking them to do all this work and then it's kind of like a stepchild. We're just saying, do everything, and then we're going to take all the money away from you and give you a pittance back and expect you to do all the work. So really, that's what this is trying to do, is just even that playing field. And because I agree with you, we don't have enough funds and we continue to have to cut things, but it's just unfair when you ask one division to do more than everybody else.
Thank you for that, Senator Dennis. And I know I got on my soapbox because I agree with you, but it exposes another issue with how we fund and the appropriateness of how we fund. And yes, if they're being treated differently, they should be treated fairly. But it also exposes that if this was the moneymaker and why we wanted to keep it and not give it back, then there is a mechanism in that of how we make decisions where that we now have to fill that hole with something else that makes that money. And so I get it. We will move on to anything else. Jesus, thank God I'm not on finance.
Madam Vice Chair, I'm not sure if the other folks that gave testimony in the other one, they may still have some quick comments that they could give.
Okay. So we have Miss, it was Tina?
Yeah, Teresa McKee from the Division of the Nevada Association of Realtors, and David Tina, and who else was it? No, Chandra already went.
It's Miss McKee. I was going through the Miss McKee, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. Again, my name is Teresa McKee. I'm CEO for Nevada Realtors. And again, thank you to Senator Dennis for carrying this bill. And like I did before, I wanted to thank Terry Reynolds, the Business and Industry Director, and Administrator Chandra. I just wanted to emphasize that we have met with them over a period of years, actually, as we discussed self-funding and how it works for the division and for the licensees. And it's, very apparent that this is a complex type of solution that took us several years to get around to being on the same page with the division on that. We had many discussions about creating self-funding as a viable mechanism to support this better services and maintain that flow of revenue to the Nevada General Fund. That was very important as part of this process. We do now share a common goal of self-funding with the division, as well as the needed technology fee, as we have discussed. The self-funding in the long run does provide a safety net for the division. It'll be less susceptible to the ebb and flow of real estate licensees. Since I've been involved with Nevada Realtors, I've seen my membership with Nevada Realtors start out in 2006 at about 22,000, and of course drop in the next 2 years to about 50% of that. So it's very hard to budget with those types of numbers, and this will help create stability for the services that we need to have the division be run. We've also seen the loss of the Northern Division office almost completely. It's only an administrative office, I think, at this point, and provides no services to either the consumers or real estate licensees. Everything has to be done through the Southern office. So self-funding is an achievable goal. It is something that we feel will help the division and help licensees and help provide better services to consumers as well. We stand in full support of SB 282 and also the amendment that was announced by the division. We've gone over that with them and fully support those kind of technical changes to make this work better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I didn't see Senator Dennis. I was looking through the camera for Mr. Tina. I think he's on. So was that just that comment from Ms. McKay?
I thought we also had is this Tiffany Banks?
Yeah. Okay.
I think she was going to give some comments. She's the general counsel for the Nevada Association of Realtors.
Hi, Senator Dennis and Vice Chair Neal. No, I deferred to Teresa McKee, our CEO, for the comment. So thank you.
Okay. And I saw you had Mr. Fenseth on, or he's just on for support, anchor.
I'm just anchoring, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair.
Okay.
I think that's it.
All right. So then we have one more question from Senator Pickard, and then we're going to go to the line and support.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's really more a comment, but maybe a question in terms of trying to confirm my understanding. If anything, the discussion today has pointed out that there's the self-funding really is the model that all but I think one other board or division currently uses. And my understanding, and this comes from my discussion back in 2017 when we were looking at this, was that the division gives back 90 million or whatever. But as Ms. McKee said, the revenues generated are fluctuating each year. We happen to be in a boom because there's a lot of market activity, although what's happened is we end up with more realtors out there, or more licensees rather, that are fighting for those few sales that are currently existing. So there's more competition that drives revenue down for the licensees. And so, but the licensing contribution or the NRED contributions fluctuate each year. If they were self-funded and retained like most of the other large boards, they wouldn't have to downsize in the midst of a growing need. And my understanding is, and this is where I may need some clarification or confirmation, is that the division actually, or I'm sorry, the department will have costs that if this went self-funded would no longer go against the general fund. So it's not like a $90 million contribution that if we remove, there's now a $90 million hole, because with that goes the expenses that are also paid for out of the general fund. We move both of these components over, and it would be a relatively small hole, is my understanding, that we would need to fill. And so again, if we're talking about a small hole to fill, that's probably something we can do within the budgeting process. And if it's small enough, we won't feel that. Where by the same token, we're not going to be reducing the size of the service or the ability of the division to service the demand by moving that money out of the division before. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Reynolds?
This is Terry Reynolds for the record. Yes, Senator Pickard, that is exactly it. I look at it really in a simplistic way, just for numbers' sake. The real estate division, for example, would contribute $10 to the general fund, and it only takes, for example, $5 to operate that they're appropriated back out of the general fund. The excess $5, for example, stays in the general fund. So, and over time, the real estate division has contributed more to the general fund than they have expended and been appropriated back to operate. So that's kind of how it works. And so you're essentially correct.
I think Vice Chair Neal's point is a very important one, and that is that if we were to say move the division to completely self-funded, if we're not contributing more than we're spending, that's going to create a need to get money from somewhere else to fill that hole in the general fund. But it was always my understanding that the actual difference between what the total department and division expenses were relative to the contribution that NRED alone makes isn't it's not a 50%, it's more like a 20%. So we're talking about maybe a $20 million hit to the general fund in relative terms. But that's 2017 understanding, and I've slept since then, so there's probably components I've forgotten.
Vice Chair Neal, through you to Senator Pickard. Basically, over the last 10 to 15 years, the real estate division has contributed more to the general fund than it's taken to expend to provide for them. All the funding essentially from the real estate division either goes into specified accounts or goes into the general fund. The real estate division receives an appropriation back to operate out of the general fund. So what we're saying is that the real estate division wants to keep the fees that they generate up to a point where they can basically pay for their expenditures and have basically a small reserve. The rest goes back to the general fund. It is not going to really impact the general fund, and we're looking at making sure we can close that gap to make sure the general fund is whole and the real estate division gets the funds that they need to operate. So it's really it's complex in a sense of how to do that from a budget perspective, but it's simple in terms of they get to keep what they generate and making sure that the balance goes back to the general fund so that they do not impact the general fund over a period of time. And I share the same concerns because there are a lot of demands on the general fund, and we don't want to make sure that we don't hurt those other entities that rely on the general fund. But in this case, we're trying to make sure that we can stabilize the expenditures and the revenues that come into the real estate division so they don't have the seesaw up and down over the years and be able to support the real estate community as they have in the past.
All right, I really do appreciate that. So that makes me feel better that we're not actually creating a hole that someone else is going to have to fill in the general fund. But ultimately, and I think Senator Dennis was spot on when he said that realtors are essentially paying a tax. They pay an additional tax to be realtors that no one else has to pay. And I think that's probably worthy of looking at as well. Anyway, I've occupied too much time. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move to the lines in support of SB 282.
Thank you, Vice Chair. To testify in support of SB 282, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 661. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Keith Lynham, L-Y-N-A-M. Good morning, Vice Chair Neal and members of the committee. Again, my name is Keith Lynham, a longstanding realtor and very involved with the Nevada Realtors Association. Wanted to thank Senator Dennis again for bringing forward SB 282. We are simply requesting the real estate division be treated as virtually every other division has already been treated. I would respectfully submit this is not about paying more money to government. This is not about receiving one-shot money regardless of what it's being called. This is about providing badly needed services to our licensees and, most importantly, protecting the consumer we serve. And in doing so, be treated as every other division. These bills are not a result of a short meeting. They are the result of more than 6 years of discussion with administration and the industry on the best solutions for our industry and the consumer. Please support SB 282 today, and I thank you again for your time.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 199. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Brad Spires, S-P-I-R-E-S. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members. I'm speaking as president of the Nevada Realtors, and I want to go to a little different take than has been discussed. Last session, not only did we increase pre-licensing and continuing education, but we also, in that bill, clarified the use of nicknames and required that our license numbers be included on all of our advertising. So all these new requirements added to the responsibility of both the education section and the compliance section of the real estate division. So we've created an additional burden on a division at a time when we've cut from 32 to 26. And in addition to that, we have an industry that is driving the economy in Nevada right now. So we've added work, taken away staff, and given money to others not in the real estate industry. So I would urge you to support Senate Bill 282, and I really think that Senator Dennis has done a fabulous job, and we're really fortunate to have Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Chandra there who are doing a great job for us. So thank you all and appreciate your time.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 161. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Jared Davis, Jarryd Davis. Good morning, Vice Chair Neal and members of the committee. My name is Jared Davis. I manage government relations for Zillow Group in the state of Nevada. And we'd like to speak this morning to urge support for Senate Bill 282, authored by Senator Mo Dennis. I'll be brief. Much of the conversation about the importance of the division modernizing has already been had this morning, which I think we all agree it's a good thing for the industry and for consumers and for the state. What we've also heard from the division administrator directly is we know that the division isn't fully equipped to best serve the fast-paced, technology-driven demands of today's consumers and real estate professionals, largely due to financial and technological barriers. SB 282 acknowledges these shortcomings and seeks to remedy them by removing hurdles to financial and technological progress. And it does so by allowing the Nevada's real estate division to self-fund and carry over remaining funds from one fiscal year to the next, enabling the regulatory body to more responsibly guide the industry. We believe that SB 282 represents a creative and thoughtful approach, and we would urge all lawmakers today to support SB 282. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 522. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Vice Chair Neal and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Atlas, Jennifer Atlas. I'm representing ARDA, the American Resort Development Association. We are in support of SB 282. This bill will help with division funding and move forward with needed modernization. This will benefit both the industry as well as consumers. We appreciate your time today and urge your support of SB 282.
Vice Chair, you have no more callers in support at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will switch to opposition.
To testify in opposition of SB 282, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Okay, we'll move to neutral.
To testify neutral on SB 282, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Vice Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. So I just really quickly, I wanted to explain to the callers that were listening. I know we got caught up into a broader conversation on budget and the mechanics of it and this whole federal thing. But I understand the issue, right, of the destiny piece and controlling the funding. The conversation just brought us into a broader conversation. And so I wanted to make that clear that I am hearing the testimony and I'm understanding the bill and what it does. I just went off into a big picture scenario. So I just wanted to clarify that so people who were tuning in were like, she doesn't get the bill, but I do. Senator Dennis, any closing comments?
I do. I don't know if Assemblywoman Kasama has anything first before I go.
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you heard, I mean, we're just trying to make put something in place that will make it fair for realtors to be able to get the services that they need so that they can provide the services that they're providing for our citizens here in Nevada when it comes to real estate. This bill helps to put in place the things that we need so that they can continue to offer those services. And it also provides for the technology to be upgraded, which is part of that needs to happen. And so I appreciate the time to have the discussion today and would urge support. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will close the hearing on SB 282 and open up for public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair. To speak in public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Vice Chair, you have no callers for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so members, we have finished our business for today and it is 10:06. So we will go ahead and adjourn Senate Commerce.